on Denver Broncos Mile High View, no commercials, and you know you're never getting bullshit here. At the very beginning of this YouTube channel, I said, and I submitted to the sports talk radio, the talking heads, and the reason I started this channel is because of the denial, the misinterpretations, the incorrect blaming for the Broncos' problems. And I said from the very beginning that the Denver Broncos were a team in decline due to having no plan whatsoever for moving on from Peyton Manning. You can blame Trevor Siemian, you can blame Case Keenum, you can blame Vance Joseph, you can blame Fangio, you can blame everybody else under the sun all you want all day long. That's not going to solve the problem, or it has nothing to do with really the problem, the actual problem. I said what the problem was long ago was that John Elway became everything he hated. He became Al Davis. He became just like Al Davis. John Elway never wanted to put a plan, never wanted to hire somebody. And eventually even pissed Gary Kubiak back off, where he just completely left because pissed off Gase, pissed off any kind of coach that wanted to bring in their own players, bring in their own system, and start developing, players, tracking them through scouting, developing them. John Elway wanted to be in so much control of that situation that he would never allow a real coach to come in with a real plan. And that's why you got Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph was clearly hired as a yes man. Okay? Yes, Mr. Elway. Yes, Mr. Elway. We'll do that, Mr. Elway. John Elway got into the plug-and-play idea. James Marilat has a post about 10 reasons. Well, the number one reason is that Elway wanted full control and would not bring in a real head coach with a real plan and or a whole team of people with a plan that they could build around the post Manning. This goes all the way back to Gase. And the arguments they had about whether to put the emphasis on the defense, and Gase knew the offense was in decline. He knew that, and that manifested itself. Well, yes, John Elway got a Super Bowl, and Manning knew it was a one-hit wonder. And then Elway built that defense up that him and Gase were arguing about. Got rid of Phillips. Again, somebody that had ideas that, Elway doesn't want to deal with. This goes, again, back to what I said from the very beginning of not having any ownership. And there's but who's going to fire Elway? Is he going to fire himself? And what's Joe Ellis? Is he more or less, yes, Mr. Elway, yes, Mr. Elway? So basically, you've got the equivalent, in my opinion, of a meddling owner in John Elway. That was the issue. It wasn't Case Keenum. I mean, Case Keenum's crime was he agreed to sign with the Broncos. They never used him as a play-action quarterback because they had Musgrave. But Marilat doesn't mention any of that. Who brought in Brock Osweiler? Well, it wasn't Vance Joseph. They didn't have a system for Brock Osweiler. They weren't going to bridge him into if you want to go play action, well, he was a pocket quarterback. There was who else? Paxton Lynch. Vance Joseph didn't draft him. And that was the yes man. Yes, Mr. But again, Vance Joseph was just following orders. Yes, following orders. So now Elway got into this. I can plug and play. I can just plug and play. I can just and that's kind of the Al Davis mentality. Instead of letting the coach come in, run the team, and, scout the players, develop the system, find a quarterback that fits that system. They had pocket quarterbacks that they brought in, but then they wanted to run play action, and then they brought in a play action quarterback, but they had Musgrave who runs the air raid pocket quarterback system, and of course it's going to fail. So the Broncos and the fans, I was the one screaming from the rooftops when I started this YouTube channel that the defense was in decline since 2015. And it was going to be worse than it was yet last year. I didn't know it was going to be this bad. But I said every year it got worse. And I was like, everybody came out and said I didn't know what I was talking about. This is the fifth best defense. How dare you? Because there's so much denial going on of what has happened. There's no Pat Bowlen, therefore you have a rogue GM basically that wants to run the show all himself. He doesn't want to bring in a coach. Now he's got Fangio. Now Fangio, of course, Marillac wants to throw him under the bus. His crime really is simply taking the job. I could not believe that Fangio would ever accept this job. He must have been told, I'll let you build up the team. I'll allow you to, but these players, most of them aren't his. This mess, he if you want to say he's guilty for anything, was signing on to this mess. I couldn't believe he did it. I didn't think anybody would want to come here with Elway, being a dictator, being out playing the part of Al Davis. So that's his crime. And I said that from the very beginning when I started this channel. Don't blame Keenum. Don't blame Simeon. Don't blame Fangio. Don't blame Vance Joseph. I mean, he's just following orders. Yes, sir, Mr. Elway. Yes, sir. Don't blame Joe Ellis. He can't fire. I mean, he can't, he's yes, sir, Mr. Elway, So, if is Elway going to relate? Right now, you're going to have to build on what you got. You're going to have to let Fangio, you're going to have to allow him to start bringing in players. You're going to have to let Scangarello start bringing in. They got to rebuild the offensive line from scratch. I mean, you got one guy in there that's decent. Everybody else has got to go. The defense, there's no defense. The whole defense has to be revamped, complete. That's how far this thing is degraded. At least get linebacking in and front people, somebody that can push the pocket. But if Elway wants to continue to do this plug and play crap, this team is never going to go anywhere. I would say you got a good head coach, out of pure luck, in my opinion. Let him do his job. Let him scout and bring in players. Elway, step away from it. Scangarello, your job in Munchak is to rebuild that offensive line and keep, you got young receivers, you got to keep on that path. But the daunting task is on defense. Everybody was in denial about the defense except yours truly. Do you believe the defense really needs to be overhauled now? Was I right from the beginning to say that it was declining every year? Do I at least get that, Marillac? Instead of all this fifth greatest defense, oh, don't worry, Fangio is going to just wave a magic wand and all these horrible players are going to all of a sudden be good. Yes, and fans, if you're going to blame John Elway, which you should, you got to blame his players too, because they're both attached at the hip.